What if the 4% rule was actually setting you up for failure? For decades, it's been the gold standard for retirement planning, but the most sophisticated retirees are quietly moving away from it. They've learned something about the 4% rule that could change how you think about retirement forever. In this video, I'll share the 8 reasons you shouldn't trust the 4% rule and how to level up your retirement strategy. Let's start with the biggest issue. The 4% rule is outdated. Bill Bengen first introduced the concept in 1994, over 30 years ago. So it's time that we recognize the 4% rule needs a refresh. This isn't just my opinion. Even Bengen himself acknowledges his initial research no longer applies. In fact, he's releasing a new book with updated recommendations, including revising the safe withdrawal rate to 4.7% instead of the original 4%. So if the creator of the 4% rule says it's no longer 4%, why are we still treating it like an unshakable law? And it's not just outdated, it's also way too conservative for most people, which brings me to reason number 2. The second reason is that it's actually a plan for the worst case scenario. Bill Bengen has recently admitted that even his updated 4.7% rule represents a worst case scenario designed for the most challenging retirement start in modern US history. Specifically, someone retiring in 1968 who faced both a bear market and high inflation. If you plan your retirement based on the worst possible scenario, you'll likely have peace of mind that you won't run out of money, but you're almost guaranteed to work longer than necessary and accumulate far more money than you'll ever need. You're essentially leaving time, freedom, and experiences on the table. This is why so many people end up over-saving. They're preparing for a retirement nightmare that's statistically unlikely to happen. And that's just one unrealistic assumption baked into the 4% rule. Here's another. It assumes your spending will be perfectly steady. The 4% rule assumes you'll withdraw the exact same amount each year, adjusting only for inflation. But that's not how real life works. What happens in the year you need a major home renovation, or when you face an unexpected medical bill, or when you finally take that once-in-a-lifetime trip to Europe? Real retirement spending isn't a straight line. It's a roller coaster filled with significant ups and downs. Any rule that doesn't account for these spending spikes is bound to fall short in practice. And it's not just the fluctuations from year to year. The way you spend also changes across decades too. The next reason you can't trust the 4% rule is that it assumes your spending will increase with inflation every year. However, numerous studies show that retirees actually spend less as they age. Retirement spending typically follows 3 distinct phases: the go-go years, when you're traveling and active, the slow-go years, when you scale back activities, and the no-go years, when most expenses are health-related. If your plan assumes perpetually increasing spending, you'll likely oversave or miss out on withdrawing funds when you could actually enjoy those funds during your active years. And here's another crucial flaw in the 4% rule. It assumes everyone has identical risk tolerance. Retirement withdrawal strategies are not one size fits all. 2 people could retire with the same portfolio size, but if one is comfortable with market swings and the other isn't, their withdrawal rates could be significantly different. Your personal risk tolerance could mean that you could safely withdraw more than 4%, or that you need to be even more conservative. The 4% rule doesn't even ask the question. And that leads to the next problem. It locks you into a rigid plan. The 4% rule is often interpreted as withdraw exactly 4% every year, no matter what. But most financial planners will tell you a flexible approach is better. That means adjusting withdrawals when markets are down or increasing spending when markets are up. Life changes, markets change, and your withdrawal strategy can change with it. The next reason not to trust the 4% rule is that it ignores taxes. It assumes your 4% withdrawal is gross income, enough to cover both spending and taxes. But taxes can vary wildly depending on where your money is invested. Let's look at two families who retire with the same portfolio balance. Family A has 50% of their wealth in Roth accounts, and Family B only use pre-tax retirement accounts. Now, according to the 4% rule, they can both withdraw the same amount. But in reality, Family A has far more income because their Roth money is tax-free. Family B could be losing thousands a year to taxes. A smart withdrawal strategy considers taxes from day one. The 4% rule simply doesn't. And finally, there's one last assumption baked into the rule that doesn't fit the way many people are actually retiring today. The 4% rule is built for a single retirement date and never working ever again. But more people are taking a phased approach, semi-retirement, consulting, seasonal work, where active income supports part of their lifestyle. If you transition gradually, you may not even need to rely on your portfolio in the early years, which changes the math entirely. A dynamic retirement path deserves a dynamic withdrawal strategy, and the 4% rule is far from that. The 4% rule can be a useful starting point, but it's really just like a set of training wheels. It gives you balance when you're first learning, but it's not how you want to ride for the rest of your life. To move beyond training wheels, you need a plan that's built for you, not a plan that looks like mine or your best friend's. And while building a personalized plan deserves far more attention than I'm going to give it in this video, here are some initial principles to consider. Start by identifying your destination. Understand what your goals are. The more I've learned about creating a financial plan that supports your lifestyle, the more I've realized it centers around what you hope to accomplish, your goals. Not everyone has the same finish line or the same path to get there. Some take the shortest route to full retirement while others ease into it. Figure out what you want in life and work backwards from there. Building a personal plan means understanding how your spending really works. Not a flat number that rises forever, but cycles of higher spending in your active years and lower spending later on, with room for occasional big expenses. It also means embracing flexibility. Just like steering around bumps on the road, you'll want a strategy that lets you adjust. Spending less when markets are down and giving yourself more freedom when things are going well. And then there's taxes. Think of taxes as the wind you're riding into. Two retirees have the same identical portfolio sizes, but if one has most of their money in Roth accounts, they're riding with a tailwind. Every dollar they withdraw goes straight into their pocket. The other, with only pre-tax accounts, is pedaling against a headwind, losing a chunk of every withdrawal to taxes. Your withdrawal plan needs to account for this, or you'll end up working harder to cover the same distance. While I won't completely abandon the 4% rule, I don't plan to base my entire retirement strategy on this single rule of thumb, and I suggest you approach it with a similar level of caution. I'll still use it or similar safe withdrawal rates for basic calculations like our COSFI number. However, we'll continue developing a more personalized plan for ourselves, which will likely allow us to withdraw significantly more than 4% in retirement. I really like the analogy equating the 4% rule with training wheels. It gets you moving in the right direction and teaches you the basics. But to truly enjoy your retirement journey, you need to remove these training wheels and build a plan that's flexible, resilient, and tailored specifically to you. But before you create your own plan, there's one mistake you can't afford to make. And sadly, it's one that so many of us overlook. It took me several years to finally realize my mistake. Watch this video to make sure you're not falling victim to the same mistake. Thanks so much for watching and enjoy the journey.